Thanks for checking out the Blowout podcast. If you're looking for genuine perspectives throughout the world of sports, without the bias that comes from a national media outlet, well, you've come to the right place. I'm your host, Ty Schwartzlow, but before we kick things off, we need a quick pep talk from Coach Bill Yost. Now we're in the right frame of mind. If you don't find that exciting, do me a favor, check your pulse. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Blowout podcast here on a Friday afternoon, not live, but in Winona, Minnesota, nonetheless. I'm joined by sports information director here at HBC, as well as Bugs and Cranks contributor Landon Evanson. Landon, thank you so much for coming in on a busy July day. A lot of things going on in the sports world.
Yeah, always got something to do.
And certainly it started off this morning as, let's give you a little rundown of exactly what to expect before we jump right into things. We've got certainly a big football transfer that is making some waves, and obviously you may have heard about this guy, LeBron James. And Landon, I know you don't care quite as much as the typical fan, but you certainly have some things to say about Mr. James's return back home. And then baseball certainly is going to make up the majority of this podcast, and the Milwaukee Brewers. Jimmy Nelson on his way to Miller Park, and certainly got some injuries around the NL Central as well. Trade deadline talk, and hey, there's a World Cup final coming up, so on-the-field action is certainly something we're not going to ignore, but I think you have a good idea of what to expect, so let's get things started with the Luis Suarez transfer. And Landon, what's the first thing you think of when you think of Luis Suarez? It's the biting incident, right?
Yes, from the World Cup, biting, and apparently he has a history of it.
Yeah, that's the more disturbing part, when you have a third bite. And I'm never going to bite someone again. Very difficult to believe that apology when you've done it 3 separate times, but I'm getting bogged down here as he had a $228 million transfer fee. I think this really proves that if you're talented, people will overlook at any sort of morality or any of those type of issues. Does it surprise you that just 10 days after this man bites someone on the field, on the world's biggest stage, this type of a transfer comes down?
No, because morality doesn't win you football matches. That's all it comes down to. And the fans in those areas, it was just like we were talking about before, the San Francisco Giants fans loved Barry Bonds and just willfully chose to look the other way and adored him and act like he was the greatest thing since Babe Ruth. And really, in terms of production, it's hard to argue with him that way. But if he had been a Dodgers player coming into San Francisco, they would have hated him every bit as much as baseball fans around the country did. It's just one of those things, people look the other way. I mean, people have their strong opinions, and oh my God, can you believe this stuff? And then as soon as he becomes a member of their team, all of a sudden suddenly you can explain things away a little bit more. So I'm not surprised by that at all.
It's certainly, at least going to the YouTube, because not being a huge international football fan, I haven't seen Suarez play quite extensively as I'd like to. But you type in his name and you find 5 bite videos for every one highlight video. And you do eventually find a highlight video. Well, at least in the sports sense, he's certainly worth every single penny that you're paying him with his ability on the pitch. And I don't want to get caught up in European soccer talk too much, but Barcelona next season with Lionel Messi, potentially Neymar gets healthy, and Suarez on the front line, that's the most entertaining football front, I think, American, international, whatever you want to go. Certainly paying a lot of money for it. Is this going to make you maybe check out some European football more often? I'm
one of the minority. I mean, I like football. There's international football and there's American football, and I talk about that all the time. And I'm interested in it as just, it's not something you get to catch on TV very often unless you order some kind of a package with your cable deal or some kind of satellite thing. But if the Premiership's on or something, I have no problem watching those. I look forward to the World Cup. I enjoy it very much. I enjoy international football, I think, much more than the average American anyway. And, when you throw that line out of that's your striker line, that's going to be tough to top that.
Yeah, certainly I imagine a different breed of football almost. And some of the skeptics towards international football say, well, the World Cup comes around every 4 years. It's once every 4 years.
There's just an Olympic mentality here in the United States about it. Our sports are different. Baseball's a national pastime forever. Now it's the National Football League. I think our sports are just higher scoring and faster moving, and that's what we're accustomed to as Americans. And I think that's just it's a little bit more of an adjustment period. I don't think it's so much. I think people do enjoy the World Cup. It's just, is that going to extend out where you're going to be following it that closely? I think it's easier for people who don't follow the sport regularly to be able to latch on to something that lasts 6 weeks rather than something that is ongoing.
Well, I think one thing that I have realized throughout this, I guess over the past month as this World Cup has played on, has been you have the extreme talent of the national teams, but oftentimes the club teams can be even more talent on their rosters. So it's not a case of you're seeing the best soccer every 4 years. You can tune into some European club teams and see a Bayern Munich who is peppered with German national team players.
Well, I mean, that's what it comes down to. The World Cup, the reason it has the intrigue it has, though, is because it's the idea of us against them. It's your countrymen. And that's where the pride comes from. I don't put any stock in that. I mean, with clubs, it's no different than free agency in any other sport. You can build a powerhouse if you want to, but there's something to be said when a bunch of guys from the same country all band together and prove we're the best at what we do.
All right, I want to ask you.
That's where the intensity comes from.
I want to ask you a question from this past week, and this is a conversation we had off air. The Germany-Brazil game, if that's Germany versus the United States 7-1, how different is the backlash to the United States?
It's quite bad. I mean, the international community, the way they perceive the United States when it comes to international football anyway, they think that we hate the game because we don't understand it, number one. You hear that quite often. And, they're just not looked at as they're on the same level as these other nations, and really they're not. They're not. I mean, to make the argument they're a top 16, top 24 club in the world, okay, that's fine. But, I mean, really, you're only talking about every World Cup. There's only 4 or 5 teams that are legitimately the team that could go out and win the Cup, and the United States has not had that. I mean, at least not in my lifetime. I mean, I know back long time, 50, 60 years ago, I mean, I think they had done some damage. But, my firm belief, as it always has been, is that American athletes, our best athletes play football. They play basketball. Then you start learning, reaching out into baseball, some hockey, even though that's more of a Canadian thing in North America in terms of, the real elite players. But I just think our best athletes play other sports. And I think if some of our elite athletes were to, commit to international football from a young age, it would be a different story. If you start talking about guys like Kobe Bryant, Richard Sherman.
How about Russell Westbrook? Imagine him on a soccer pitch.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, you're talking about the size, the speed, the strength. And it's the kind of thing, if you're a great athlete, you're going to be able to make an adjustment. It's not to say, and I'm not by any means degrading what some of these international football players do. I'm not saying that any of those guys would necessarily be at that level just because they play a different. I'm just saying I don't think that our top athletes, I mean, when was the last time there was a player from the United States that was really considered one of the elite players in the world?
It hasn't happened, and I think that going forward, one of the things that will help international football grow here in the States is if you have, because at the time the premier, and now at least the premier American players are playing in the MLS, which is not the premier league within the world. If you have some of these American players who are getting some of these big transfer offers to go play with the premier players, I think that helps. You can see the Americans competing against the very best. And that's what we like to watch as Americans.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is you look at the last 3 World Cups, the amount of attention it's garnered here in the United States, fans that really are behind the team. And you get that with the Olympics. They're Americans, so they're going to go out and support them. But the level of interest and intensity has increased each of the last 3 World Cups. I mean, that's over, you're talking about a course of a 12-year period. It's never going to be in this country what some people would hope it would be. But I really think that even though they had lost in the final match that they played, I mean, Tim Howard's performance, I really think did, what would be the right way to put it?
It was a signature performance.
Well, it was really something that really garnered the attention of not only the American audience, but the world. I mean, even the announcer had talked about this is one of the best performances from a goaltender in the World Cup in 50 years. And it wasn't even, statistics aside, you can talk about the 16 saves, but without Tim Howard, the United States gets routed. It would have been a Germany-Brazil match. Tim Howard single-handedly kept that match close and gave the Americans a chance to win. And really, they had an opportunity. They really did. They had an opportunity to tie it up, and it just didn't work out. But they put up a fight. And I mean, I think that's the biggest thing is just, can the Americans be competitive? And I think they are competitive. It's just really when it comes down to it, the Americans don't have the kind of striker talent that Germany has, that the Netherlands has, that Argentina has. They don't have a player that can by himself get the ball at midfield, march his way through the defenders and score a goal. And those countries have that, and the Americans don't. So they have to really play a smart brand of team ball, and they do that. And defensively, they were outstanding. I mean, if they'd had some strikers, they really could have done some damage. I mean, because the defenders and Howard were fantastic. But now Howard being, 35, 36, I mean, he's not going. He's done. He's not going to the next World Cup. He won't be there. So it's a question of who do you get now to be your goaltender?
Yeah, the question becomes who is that next wave, and I've said it a couple of different times. I think it's worth mentioning again. As American football, certainly at the youth level, participation in that has been on the decline in recent years. It would seem to reason that primarily another fall sport like soccer would have increases in participation rates, and you certainly get the bigger pool. We've talked about some of the athletes in the United States, and gonna move on now. It's the hypothetical, everyone. What if LeBron played soccer? That's not what I want to ask you right now. As we've got something finally.
He's in
concrete.
that group, though, an athlete of that caliber. When you're talking about, I think oftentimes people would look at it and say, well, because of their size, they're maybe not as quick. Guys, the cornerbacks in the NFL, small forwards and guards in the NBA. Yes, you're taller, but they have that quickness. They have that footwork. And because of their size and strength advantage, I mean, really, international football, the only guy that really comes to mind over the last several years is Peter Crouch, who played for Liverpool. He was about 6'4", 6'5", and he just towers over everybody. So they would just, have a nice cross in the box and hope he had it in, and it happened quite a bit. He was just so much bigger than, the competition, and that really made a big difference. You're talking about guys playing for the United States. If they're 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", and they are much stronger, they're going to be able to hold those people off when they have their back to the net. They're going to be able to get position. But again, it's like I said, it's all speculation. These, that might happen, but really, like I said, and it's kind of beyond dispute. Our best athletes play football and basketball.
Well, speaking of speculation, you had a perfect segue. I think if you've turned on any national media outlet, it's been all about where is LeBron James going. And if you've tuned it on at all today, he is in fact heading back to Cleveland. At least my end takeaway is a sense of relief. At least we know where he's going as opposed to all of this speculation. Your gut reaction to LeBron going home? Don't care. Not one bit.
Don't. I'm not. NBA is not my thing. I haven't followed the NBA for a very, very long time. The last time I was following the NBA, Jordan, Pippen, and Rodman were playing. Karl Malone and John Stockton were still playing for the Jazz. I like it from the standpoint of LeBron James. I think it's full circle for him. I think it's a good thing for him. I think it's going to really alleviate some of the scrutiny that he takes, and I think especially if he can get them back to a position where they're competing in the Eastern Conference for the Eastern Conference title, or even if they get to the finals and lose, I mean, there's almost a sense of redemption there. We've seen it in our society. People forget. I mean, the people in Cleveland and all the hatred they had toward that and the boo, that's all going to instantaneously go out the door. It's no different than we just talked about, like with Suarez or Barry Bonds. It's just different when he's your guy.
Yep.
And I'm kind of thankful for it because now I don't have to listen so much to everybody on ESPN Radio and the Dan Patrick Show and all this other stuff, because constantly talking about LeBron, there's a fair amount of people that are interested in sports who do not care, and they are tired of hearing about it, and myself included. But this is going to carry on and on and on. I mean, there's a reason why I don't watch ESPN anymore. I know I mentioned ESPN Radio, but there's a reason why I won't watch SportsCenter and I don't want to be exposed to these things. It doesn't matter to me. ESPN lost me a long time ago when they give more coverage to what's going on in mini camp for football teams and talking about the stretch run for Major League Baseball. Somehow, some way, and people should not forget, ESPN, the first big ticket they got was Major League Baseball. It was not the NFL. When they started up Baseball Tonight and they had the Sunday night game of the week, they had Wednesday night doubleheaders and whatnot, that was the first big, huge, mainstream, major American sport that they started broadcasting. It was not the NFL and it was not the NBA. But for some reason, they feel like the only thing anyone wants to hear about is football and basketball. And there are a lot of people who don't, and I'm one of them. And so all this talk about LeBron James, okay, great, he's going back to Cleveland. Now can we talk about, baseball? There's some good runs. There's some good division races going on right now. NL Central being one of them. There are 4 teams that are within 3.5 games of each other in the National League Central. So LeBron's going back to Cleveland. Great. The season tips off in November. I'll get back to you.
Well, we will wrap up the LeBron discussion. I just have one more factor. Being a Michael Jordan supporter, certainly he is the greatest of all time. LeBron, a couple years ago, when he went back to Miami, changed the number 6 for the reason, as he explained, Jordan should be the only one to wear number 23. He will keep number 6 going to Cleveland. Do you like that move?
There are numbers that have been...
Do you think it proves anything?
I'm going to tell you something. If you want to get a little nod to somebody out of respect, that's fine. But, you wore 23 for a long time. So all of a sudden now you have this realization. And, Julius Erving wore number 6. So, okay, how about that? There's only one Dr. J, too. I mean, the idea of any number being retired in perpetuity, there's a reason why Jackie Robinson's number was retired. and no one else can wear it. And there's a reason for that. And Michael Jordan doesn't even scratch that surface. There's arguments about should they do the same thing for Roberto Clemente, number 21, and I think they should. I think that's a very, very valid thing. But to say that nobody else should wear number 23 just because Michael Jordan is the greatest basketball player of all time, it's great that you want to, tip the cap to him, but there's absolutely no reason why that number should be retired in perpetuity. Same thing in hockey. No one really wears 99 out of respect for Wayne Gretzky, but by no means should you retire the number because he's the best of all time. So what?
Okay.
You need to do something that has more meaning than just being good at a game. And Jackie Robinson represented a lot more than baseball. And so, he deserved that. Michael Jordan doesn't.
Well, that is our LeBron update, courtesy of Landon Evanson. Unless there's another trade, as you said, check back in November. Really nothing much else is going to happen. LeBron was the big shockwave. So we're going to move on to Major League Baseball, and I am so thankful, Landon. So thankful Jimmy Nelson is headed to Milwaukee. About time? Do you think it was did they wait too long to bring him up?
Well, that always goes from club to club. The Brewers, like I said, Brewers wanted to make sure that he was ready, and they thought he was going to be able to contribute every fifth day. I think they're confident that they're going to be able to get that out of him now. Marco Estrada is a problem, and that's going to hold them back. And with Jimmy Nelson coming in, it gives him another solid starter. Make no mistake, the NL Central is Yadier Molina goes down with an injury. Brandon Phillips goes down with an injury. That helps the Brewers, but we've seen this before. A couple years ago, Adam Wainwright was down for the season, and everyone was like, oh, this is the Brewers' division to win. Well, how'd that turn out? National League Championship Series, Cardinals still got him. And the Cardinals are a kind of team that tends to find a way. In October, pitching is what's going to win you that championship. You look, San Francisco Giants have 2 World Series wins in the last 4 years and an offense that is almost unheard of. It takes you back to the 60s with the Dodgers. Maybe 1 or 2 guys can do something, and it's a bunch of other ones out there just doing the best they can. You win with pitching in the playoffs, and so I think the Brewers realize they need more. Garza's had a good year. Gallardo, sometimes he's going to be great, sometimes he's going to be average. But it really just comes down to you have to have the pitching, and Jimmy Nelson gives him another arm that should give him a chance to win. And we've seen a lot of these young guys come up now. It's not like it was 25, 30 years ago where there are nerves. These guys step in, they're ready to roll. They're not intimidated by it. And, hopefully for the Brewers' sake, it's the same thing with Jimmy Nelson, and he can help them get where they want to go. But they are going to they have probably the best lineup in the National League. But come playoff time, they're going to run into pitching, whether it's Washington, whether it's Los Angeles, Atlanta. They're going to shut that offense down. So you're going to need to be able to stop other teams from scoring. And so it's a big thing for the Brewers to get a guy like Jimmy Nelson.
Well, the reason I was so adamant on him coming to the majors sooner is he's been lights out in the Pacific Coast League, which is a notoriously hitters league. And then you have Marco Estrada leading the majors with 27 home runs allowed. It seems to me like this was a very obvious decision. And my question moving forward to that is, Estrada going to the bullpen, that's not necessarily you plug him back in there and stop worrying about him. He's still going to be a hindrance.
Estrada needs to go. If the Brewers want to get where they're looking to go, he is a problem. And any thought that you can put him in there as a long reliever or use him late, all the home runs he's given up, I'd rather have a guy giving up home runs in the 2nd and 3rd inning than the 7th and the 8th. Because you have time to recover if he's getting hit hard early. You're in a 1-run game or a tie game, or you're down a run and you're coming back, and all of a sudden you get a guy who goes out there and gives up a couple of bombs. That's not going to help you. Estrada is not someone who's going to help the Brewers get where they want to go, and the sooner they realize that, the better. If they keep him around, it's their own funeral.
That is the truth hurts, I think, is the best way to describe that as a Brewers fan, having heard that.
You just have to look at assessing players for what they are and not having any kind of emotional attachment because they play for your team.
Well, it's not the fact that he plays for the team. It's the fact that the Brewers have seen to try to be forcing him as the number 5 starter when it's been very obvious that he's not going to succeed. And I guess the thing that I get is with the injuries in the NL Central is that now Melvin and Atanasio are acknowledging that now is time to build and get a little bit of a cushion for the stretch run. How much does it help to have a young prospect, certainly been hyped up as much as you could be in the Brewers system? How much does that help to have a young guy like that come in, or is that more?
I think it's going to give him a shot in the arm if he can go out and pitch like he has all season long. There's always going to, whenever a rookie comes up and they start out strong, you always have that stretch of 3 or 4 weeks where everything's clicking, and is this guy ever going to lose? There's always these video game mentalities about it, but really, these next 6 weeks are critical for the Brewers, and because Cardinals are still going to be a good club, the Reds are still going to be a good club, and the Pirates have been coming on strong. But with Yadier being out and Phillips being out, you have an opportunity to build a cushion. So they need. I mean, if the Brewers don't make a move at the deadline, I would be shocked. They have to look at this as this is our opportunity to not only win the division, but maybe get home field in the National League. And we see how the Brewers play at Miller Park. It's important to get home field. The Brewers are a very, very good club at home. And if you are playing elimination games at home, there's nothing more ideal than that. You even if it's a situation where you're down, you get the last chance. And with the offense they have, I'll take my shot on that every time out, because that's a team that can score 5-6 runs in a heartbeat.
Well, then, I guess having said that, you move forward to certainly there's going to have to be a move to be made. This is the time, I think, to add a piece. To me, it's got to start at the back end of maybe not the back end, but in the bullpen. I like the starting rotation, assuming Nelson pitches. What are you thinking? What is the ideal piece to bring in for Doug Melvin?
You still add a starting pitcher. If you can get somebody in the back end of the bullpen that can help you, who's not a closer, that helps.
Who gets bumped from the starting rotation then if you bring someone in?
You can never have too much pitching, ever. And even as well as Jimmy Nelson has pitched in the minors, that's not a situation where they can be looking at it and saying, okay, well, we've got this other piece. Right now, it's potential.
Okay.
So they have to be looking at it as right now, if he pitches as he's capable, we're solid. If not, maybe we use him as a reliever out of the bullpen, a left-handed arm that can help us. I mean, there were rumors, I think you had mentioned earlier today about Jake Peavy and whatnot. If you can get a veteran pitcher who knows how to win and has pitched in October before, there's no such thing as too much. Pitching is what's going to win it for you. Even if you have 5 starters and one of them, well, you're not going to be able to start a game. And in the new playoff system, for whatever reason, they've gotten away from the 3 starters. Everyone wants to go with 4. So you need 4, and the 5th guy can help out the bullpen. So he makes the bullpen longer too. So if I'm the Brewers, from a lineup standpoint, they need nothing, really. I mean, they could upgrade at first base. They could, but they can, with what they have, Overbay and Reynolds, they can survive with that. The rest of the lineup is so good. But I think priority number 1 would be getting a veteran starting pitcher. And then number 2 would probably be somebody at the back end of the bullpen, and then first base. So, I mean, that sounds like a lot of moves, but at first base, it's not like they need to go out and get Prince Fielder and bring him back. And I know he's injured and he's out, but I'm just using it as an example. A couple weeks back on the Sports Buzz, you brought up the idea of a guy like James Loney, and that's perfect.
And the scouts at the Rays, there's been talk that they've been scouting David Price. I think that'd be too steep of a price, and I don't think it'd be worth it. If you're going to take somebody from the Rays, they're struggling, could be sellers. I think Loney is the guy.
And he's affordable. He's a very good defensive first baseman. He's going to hit for average. He's going to give you some doubles, some power here and there. And that for the Brewers, that's all they really need. If they get somebody who has a pulse at first base, who isn't going to strike out consistently and get on base, and that's the problem with Overbay and Reynolds. They might pop one here and there. Overbay might make a play. You get a guy like James Loney, who over the course of the time he's with the Brewers can go out and hit 285, hit 3 or 4 homers. Get him, get his fair share of doubles. He gives you a presence at first base offensively, which you haven't had consistently. You can pitch to Overbay, you can pitch to Reynolds. They're going to strike out. Reynolds, unless he's hitting the ball out of the park, what's he doing for you? Loney can make some things happen with the bat.
I have a feeling I already know the answer to this one. Potentially Adam Dunn, could probably get him for relatively cheap. Your thoughts on bringing Adam Dunn to Miller Park?
No, I don't think that really does much for you, because Adam Dunn, his whole career has been he hits the ball out of the park, he draws walks. Now, his on-base percentage is going to be better, but he's a butcher defensively. So you're actually downgrading at first base from Reynolds and Overbay defensively, whereas Loney is, I don't know if I'll say he's a Gold Glover, but he's a very good first baseman.
Certainly an improvement.
And I don't know, but when you talked about David Price, I've always been a firm believer, if you know you need one more piece to get where you want to go, like the A's just traded with Samardzija, if you know that that's the last piece to the puzzle, it's worth going all in for. The Brewers are not the clear front runner, not only in the National League, but in the National League Central right now. I mean, it's very feasible with that division. They could finish 3rd and miss the playoffs entirely. The Cardinals, and they're going to figure something out. The Cardinals are not going to go. Anybody has any illusions that they're going to go with Tony Cruz the rest of the season? You're misleading yourself. And the Pirates, I mean, they have the best outfield in baseball right now with Marte and McCutchen and Polanco, and they've been coming on strong. And the Reds are a good club, and they're going to miss Brandon Phillips, but They're going to keep on going. By no means is this Division One. That's why these next 6 weeks are big for the Brewers, because they can really put some distance between themselves and these other teams by capitalizing and making moves. They're going to help them out.
All right, before we transition into the A's and a little bit national baseball talk, we've got to bring it up. We talked about it a month or two ago. Joe Mauer with the Yadier Molina injury. It certainly would have to be a perfect storm of things happening. Is there any chance at all? Any chance at all?
I know when
Mauer ends up with the
I know when the
Cards?
season began, what would be the one scenario that would come up, and the thing that came to my mind was that the only thing that I could think of where a team would be a championship caliber club that would not just accept sitting back and saying, well, we'll wait till next year, would be the Cardinals. And I said, and I never thought, because it never happens, it would have to be Yachty going down for the season. Well, it's happened. Now, I still don't think it's going to happen from a standpoint of money. From a tactical standpoint on the field, if you work it out and the Cardinals are eating half that salary, at least for the rest of this year, and then going forward next year, I mean, obviously it's a huge salary to take on. But you look at Mauer, the guy's got 3 batting titles and an MVP. I know, we've been talking about it. I've been one of the ringleaders this year. He's vastly underperforming for where he is, striking out far too much for someone who's not a power hitter, who's the guy that's going to hit the ball to left center field. From a tactical standpoint, you're talking about, can Mauer catch for half a season? Absolutely, he can. And I think for the Cardinals, this is a very wise organization. Don't think for a second they haven't thought of this. You put Mauer behind the plate for the rest of the season, and if Molina can come back, great. Then you put Mauer somewhere else. Mauer has played right field for the Twins. He has done some other things. He's a great outfield. Well, I shouldn't say he's a great athlete. I think he can make those adjustments. But going into it for next season, you have a situation where you can either have Molina come back and put Mauer at first base. Now you can trade Matt Adams if you want to. Maybe you think about trading Matt Holliday, see if Matt Adams can play left field. It's not as though you're putting all your eggs in one basket and there's nowhere to go with it for next season. I think the Cardinals, coming into the season, were the only team that I thought it made sense for them on the field, and it made sense for them because they could, even though they're still considered, they're not a large market, they could swing it and make it work, whereas everybody else, it doesn't really make sense. It makes sense for the Cardinals. I still don't think it's going to happen because Mauer makes way too much money. But if it ever happens, it's going to be a situation like this.
And the only reason I even bring it up is because I think it's really the last chance for Minnesota to cash in on Mauer's value as a catcher. The further it's been since he's been behind the plate, the more skeptical, I guess, teams would be. But obviously that is a very hypothetical situation. Let's talk about a trade that really did happen. Jeff Samardzija to the Oakland A's. Is there any doubt that they are the favorites in Major League Baseball?
No, none. Oakland is the team to beat. And, as a baseball fan and someone who appreciates, and it's something that's always bothered me. Everyone always talks about wanting a World Series where it's not the teams that are always there. And I think back to 2005, and the White Sox and Astros had the lowest rated series. And if you only watch the World Series because of there's the teams that are in it, you watch the World Series because it's the World Series. And to me, there would be nothing better than Oakland winning a championship and Billy Beane finally getting that ring that he stayed in Oakland to do. I mean, he could have gone to Boston. He's had many opportunities to go elsewhere with a lot more money, but he wanted to stay there and put a championship team on the field in Oakland. And I mean, all the playoff teams that he's put together, as well as the stretch run they've had the last 3 years here, if they were able to take the whole thing down, I don't think there'd be anything better.
I think it's very obvious Billy Beane is not. The movie came out about Moneyball. Some people, skeptics of his, would say, well, he just had mauled the 3 great pitchers, but he's proven that this is probably one of his best jobs, and this team is sustainable going forward. None of these guys are going to demand huge contracts. The A's...
He's built playoff teams several times. This isn't like it was a one or two. This is like the 3rd different time.
Is this
he's
that
put
the
a
best
playoff
roster
team
he's
together.
ever had, though?
No.
No?
Those teams they had when Giambi and Tejada were still there, and when Eric Chavez, before he had gotten hurt with the pitching they had, those teams were loaded. This team doesn't even come close to that, and from a talent standpoint. But being a Twins fan, I always think back to 1991, the other teams they've had that have been, even the teams that won the first 3 straight AL Central championships. You don't have to have superstars. You just have to have a good player at every position. And Oakland has that. They don't have anyone who knocks you on your ear. They don't have anyone who overwhelms you statistically. I mean, Moss has been putting up numbers. We know Cespedes is an all-star caliber player. Donaldson's going this year. Derek Norris is a good player. But, again, they're good players. There's not one player on that roster that you would put into the elite category. But they have a very good player at every position. It's tough to beat a team when you got 9 guys who are going to go out there and get the job done. And on top of it, they have good pitching. So those are teams that are really, really tough to beat. You don't have to have Mike Trout. You don't have to have Robinson Cano. You don't have to have Buster Posey. You do not need that. I think the Giants have proven that. Now, with Samardzija, does that help? Yeah, it does. But, I mean, are they as good as the Giants pitching has had? Well, maybe not quite that good, but, I mean, make no mistake, the Giants won those 2 World Series because of their pitching, because the offense was anemic at best. You take Posey off the team, what do you got?
Not much.
But they still got 2 rings out of it because they can pitch and they can field the ball. In Oakland, they have all those things. But make no mistake, Verlander was right. I mean, people can sit there and he kind of backtracked from that a little bit. I don't think he meant it to sound arrogant, but it's true. They made that move not only to solidify themselves as the best team in the American League, but they know if they get to a situation where they got to go up against Detroit again, they aren't as deep as them in the rotation. You need somebody who can punch back. Samardzija can punch back.
There's no doubt about that. And our final thing to wrap up the baseball segment is a very open-ended question. The shift in baseball has seen a great increase, I think, about the Milwaukee Brewers, and Ron Renicky has certainly employed that with great success. Talk to me about the shift. When did it first come into play, and is this a recent type of thing? Is this something that's been slow growing? As a baseball fan, what do you think of the shift?
You talking about the defensive shift?
The defensive shift.
The Williams shift? Yeah. Well, it started with Ted Williams, and that's why it's called the Williams shift. I mean, he was just a dead pull hitter, and he wasn't going to deviate from his attack in terms of going after pitchers. And that's why, he always drew walks, and he was a dead pull hitter. And we've seen it with several players. I think over the last several years, it's become, it's almost, it's almost a dilemma in baseball, whereas anybody who has a tendency to pull, I think defenses put themselves, I will say more than anything, I don't even think it's the defenses, I think they overcommit.
You think they're overshifting?
Yeah, I do. I think they do it far more than they should. The reason no one's doing anything differently is because no hitters are really willing to adjust to just slap the ball the other way and get a hit. How many times have we seen David Ortiz get thrown out from short right field? Now, I have to give Ortiz his credit. There are times he'll drop a bunt and get a base hit. But I'm just saying, you got guys who they're playing you to pull, and you hit right into it.
So you think that
go in there. When you go into batting practice, I mean, you go in there, you drop some bunts, you hit the ball the other way, and then swing away. So on a daily basis, these guys are consciously taking the ball to the opposite field. You have to make those adjustments. Take what the defense is going to give you. Don't sit there and I'm not going to give in. The smart thing to do. The idea is to win. And so if they're shifting you and they're throwing and you slap it to left field for a base hit, let the guys behind you do the job too. They're there for a reason. It's not like you're the only one that can do anything. So I think that's why we see it. It's almost like an epidemic now. It's like anyone who's a pull hitter, everyone shifts away, and you got third baseman playing close to second base. You got that whole side of the infield just sitting there. I mean, if you can keep it fair, you're going to reach.
So I want to make sure I understand this correctly. You see the shift craze dying down to some extent, certainly not be eliminated from baseball.
No, I don't see it going anywhere. I think it's only going to get worse because the hitters don't make the adjustment.
So it's on the hitters to get that adjustment, and until they do, they're just opening themselves up for that shift.
Right. I don't think we're going to see teams stop doing it until people stop hitting into it. I mean, from a strategic standpoint, if someone's going to be hitting the ball to that side, yeah, it makes sense.
Well,
so until someone starts going the other way and making you pay for using that defense, why would you stop using it?
And when you're scouting a young player, does that maybe not add just a tiny bit of added emphasis on the ability to go the opposite way as a batter? I mean, it's certainly something you scout all the time, but...
Well, I think there are people who are going to be pull hitters. I'm saying as a major league player, on occasion, depending on the situation, you're coming up in the 7th inning of a game that's a 1-run game, a 2-run game. The smart thing to do is to just give in, slap the ball the other way. I've seen David Ortiz drop a bunt, make them pay for it. Now, early in a game, you're just going to keep going about your business. Guys like somebody like Joe Mauer, you can hit line drives to all over the park. Not everybody's like that, but I'm saying as a major league player, if you can't just sit on a fastball or take a breaking ball the other way just to, kind of put it in their mind that, maybe I'm not going to pull it, and just take advantage of it and let your teammates pick you up. I mean, until somebody starts doing that, there's no reason to stop aligning your defense that way because, you're going to put the defenders where they hit the ball. So I just think somebody needs to look at it and say, and I think David Ortiz is really one of the few guys that I see doing that. I mean, you got Big Papi, and, he's pushing 40 now. He wasn't fast to begin with, and he's certainly slower now. But, he'll drop a bunt. He'll slap it the other way. I'll take what you give me. If we need a base runner and we've been struggling for 3 or 4 innings, let's get some base runners. Let's make something happen here. And until that starts happening, I don't see the shift going away. Because it used to be something where it was only on occasion. You'd see certain hitters, it was a shift. Now you see in almost on a series by series basis, there's someone they're lining up to try and they're lining up on a shift.
It's gotten to the point where even on baseball broadcasts, you have the full 9 and you have the little dots of each individual position. I saw that and couldn't figure out what it was for about 2 innings until that's how prevalent shifting has become. So it's certainly something I don't see going away anytime soon. And as I guess it is on the batters, as you say, to make that adjustment. And anything we didn't touch on in the world of Major League Baseball? I know you are a huge fan of not just the Twins, but everything else. We've got. Did we touch on everything going on in today's game?
I think so.
All right, then I guess we can move on to international football, and certainly a big game coming up around the world: Argentina versus Germany. I'll give you my, I guess, gut reaction to the matchup. I'm excited to see Lionel Messi against the German team that really has looked like a juggernaut. I think it's a little bit reminiscent of LeBron James against the San Antonio Spurs. Fair or unfair?
It always comes down to LeBron, doesn't it? Well, I mean, look, Messi really didn't do much against why can't I? All of a sudden, the Netherlands. Sorry, I had a little brain cramp there. That wasn't necessarily a great performance. And anyone that thinks that Germany's going to come out and steamroll Argentina, that is not going to happen. That's 7-1. We're not going to see that for 50 years. And then World Cup semifinal. I do think Germany is going to win. I mean, I think they're clearly the best team. And I think, Argentina, they'll go out there. I mean, if Messi can make some things happen, I mean, he can single-handedly keep them in the game. He can score a couple goals on his own. But Germany knows that, and that's going to be their focus. They're going to make other people beat them. And, the question is, can someone?
Well, to me, I've had Germany from the get-go, and I would very easily be convinced that it will be Germany. I'm not in the same type of blowout, but I would say win convincingly. The thing that puts that grain of doubt in my mind is that Lionel Messi is undoubtedly the best player on the pitch, on the field. And anytime you have that situation, a guy like that can take over and can single-handedly win a game. So it's going to be must-see TV. What about the third place game? Excuse me. How do you think Brazil's going to respond after that drubbing to Germany?
I have no idea. And honestly, I mean, the idea of it's kind of funny to me that you play a third place game.
Yeah.
You would like to think they just come out and play their game because they have pride. But they could be just that battered and beaten where they just come out and they're just kind of, they have no energy and they're lethargic. I mean, I could easily see them losing that third place game. I mean, going back to Argentina, though, I mean, I think they could come out kind of with an American strategy. They're going to play as tight defensively as they can to keep it 0-0 and get to kicks because anything can happen in kicks. And I am not a fan at all. I've said that many times.
Why not?
There's an excitement and an intensity to the penalty kick, to the shootout. There really is. But at the same time, I've seen enough of it. You have the best goaltenders in the world, however you want to put it. There is an element of luck to it because there is some guesswork involved. You think they're going left, they go right. I don't like a world championship coming down to something that has elements of luck involved. Now, I understand they can't go out there and play for 5 hours because people would die. I understand that. But it's almost a situation where maybe you take a day off and you come back and finish it up. And I know that's not necessarily feasible either. All I'm saying is there's definitely drama and intensity to it. I'd hate to see the World Cup come down to do I go left or do I go right? And if I guess right, we win the World Cup. And if I don't, we don't.
So if you're watching on Sunday and it gets to extra time, you are absolutely positively pulling for that goal in extra time. You don't want to see it go to kicks.
No.
As entertaining as it may be, you want to see it determined.
I mean, seeing the World Cup come down to a shootout, I mean, the level of intensity in the stadium is going to be off the charts. Like I said, from that standpoint, it is exciting. But at the same time, you'd like to see the team that legitimately is the best be the one that gets to hoist the World Cup. And you just say, I mean, it's no different than hockey. When people come at me about that, it's like, well, they do shootouts in hockey. Yeah, in the regular season.
Not the playoffs.
You go into overtime and nobody scores and you have a shootout and maybe it's a tie, maybe it's not. And when it comes playoff time, you play overtime, 2 overtimes, 3 overtimes, however much it takes until someone wins, until someone gets the puck in the net. But like I said, I understand the level of energy it takes to go out there and run nonstop for 120 minutes. If you start talking about going to the extra time, I would just rather see someone be able to put the ball in the net and be crowned world champion rather than have it come down to kicks, because people can say whatever they want. I'm not an expert on international football. I'm not claiming to be. I know there's some people that will probably come out and say, oh, you have no idea what it is. Skill. Yeah, there is. It's a tremendous skill, but at the same time, I've watched a lot of penalty kick shootouts, and sometimes you see the goaltender dive left and the ball slowly roll like a knuckleball into the right corner of the net because he guessed wrong. Because you're trying to get a read off their foot, their body language, what their tendencies are. So it's not always just reacting because you're too close. If you just wait for the ball, you're going to have to guess. And the goal in international football is slightly bigger than the National Hockey League. Goaltender typically is like elbow to elbow with the pipes. International goal is big. So like I said, I just don't like the idea that you could guess wrong and pay the penalty.
Well, I've been sitting here for the last 2 minutes trying to think of some alternative, but it really is like a Harry Potter Quidditch situation where you have people playing for days on end. Probably nobody got that reference, but you have the sport playing for days on end, and I mean, ultimately the solution is going to be imperfect, but it's not going to stop me from watching this Sunday. And
I'll be watching.
My final walk-off question, if we can go back, when will you be ordering your LeBron James Cleveland Cavaliers jersey?
Well, you probably strap in because it's going to be... Well, what time is it now? Never.
Oh.
Never.
We'll keep waiting.
I don't have a basketball jersey. I've never had one. If I ever did get one, I'd probably go Jackie Moon before I'd go LeBron James.
Nice.
I'm not big on jerseys to begin with, in any sport.
All right, then in baseball, if you have to wear one baseball jersey for 24 hours, we'll say, whose is it?
Oh my.
Puckett?
I don't even think I would. You just get to a point in life where it's just,
wearing
whatever.
someone else's name on your back just doesn't. What is the point of it?
Well, I think it's, the idea of wearing somebody's jersey on your back who's younger than you are.
Oh, okay.
Maybe if it was some old school jersey, maybe.
So I should really keep wearing the LeBron one as he is older, because at a point, LeBron's going to be retired and there's going to be no one else's jersey I can wear without looking like I'm
I don't know. Probably, I'm not a Yankees fan by any stretch of the imagination. But Mariano, probably.
Okay, yeah.
Because I see somebody wearing a Yankees jersey, I immediately have a twinge of dislike. And you feel like you're at the park and you want to start razzing them a little bit, give them a little hard time. Always playful fun, not like some of these other parks in the major leagues. But, when somebody turns around, you see it's 42, immediately you stop. Anybody who has anything negative to say about Mariano Rivera doesn't like baseball. It's just fact.
I'd argue they don't like humanity, period.
I'm just saying, if you can criticize Mariano Rivera, all right. I don't even know what to say to that. All right, tip my cap, I guess. But from a legal standpoint, you are a moron.
Well, you opened it up at the beginning in saying that morality certainly is dwarfed by talent. I think Mariano Rivera is the rare exception of an athlete that we can say is truly a good person, and by all accounts.
Yeah, I remember reading this, and it stuck with me when the Yankees were going through their whole process of retiring. Well, not retiring his jersey, of course, the number had already been retired, but going through the process of the goodbyes and having Metallica come in and all these other things. Jackie Robinson's widow was at Yankee Stadium, and they were going through some things. They were waiting for the presentation to begin and everything, and as he was speaking to her, he kept referring to Jackie as Mr. Robinson. He never called him Jackie. He always said, I have a question about Mr. Robinson. What did Mr. Robinson do? Wow. He kept calling him Mr. Robinson. So he's probably the classiest athlete I've ever seen, because he has every right to act like he's the biggest thing in baseball, because he's by leaps and bounds the best reliever of all time. And even a couple years ago when Jabba Chamberlain was giving him a hard time, he got upset because Mariano shushed him while he was doing an interview while Jabba Chamberlain was talking to his family members, and actually got in his face. And Mariano never pulled rank. He never got angry at him. He was just like, you misunderstood what I was saying. So, he just smoothed things over. I mean, that's just, he could have easily just said, who the hell are you? I'm Mariano Rivera. Who are you? Because let's face it, Jabba's never been what everyone thought he was going to be. But he didn't do that. And, there's a reason why he has the respect of every baseball fan around. I mean, even Red Sox fans. I mean, they hated what he did on the field, but they respected it. You have no choice but to respect Mariano Rivera.
I think that is absolutely the perfect place to end this one. Let's end it on a good note, that's going to do it for another edition of the Blowout Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. We hope that you have a great